I'm Amanda.
Sitting in this courtroom, looking at my family across the aisle, I can't believe how far we've fallen. The judge just read out the verdict, guilty on all counts. My father, mother, brother, and the doctor involved in this heinous crime are all going to prison. It's over, but the scars, both physical and emotional, will last a lifetime. Let me take you back to the beginning. I come from a small town in Texas. My father, Henry, is a strict and traditional man who owns a successful cattle ranch. He's always believed in the importance of family legacy and the role of each family member. My mother, Carol, is a homemaker who has always put my father and my older brother, Ethan, first. Ethan, who is 32, has always been the golden child. He's charming and charismatic, but also irresponsible. He's had a string of failed businesses and relationships, and my parents have always bailed him out. I, on the other hand, have always been the responsible one. I put myself through nursing school and now work as a nurse in a local hospital. I've always been proud of my independence and hard work, but in my family, I've always felt like an afterthought. 6 months ago, Ethan was diagnosed with end-stage kidney failure. The cause was years of excessive drinking and a poor lifestyle. When I got the call from my mother in the middle of the night, I rushed to the hospital. Seeing Ethan hooked up to a dialysis machine, I felt a pang of sadness. But I also knew that his condition was a result of his own choices. My father sat at the foot of Ethan's bed, looking grim. The doctors said he needed a kidney transplant within 3 months, or he wouldn't make it. The transplant waiting list was long, and the chances of finding a match were slim. That's when I noticed the way my parents were looking at me. It was a cold, calculating look. I realized in that moment that they were thinking of me as a solution. A week later, my mother invited me to dinner. It was supposed to be a family meeting to discuss Ethan's situation. When I arrived at the ranch, nothing had changed. The same old pictures of Ethan's high school football victories hung on the walls, and there was not a single picture of me. During dinner, my father cleared his throat and said, "I've been doing some research. The transplant list is long, and most people don't make it. If only someone in the family was compatible." My mother nodded and dabbed at her eyes. I knew what they were getting at, but I kept quiet, waiting to see how far they would go. Finally, my father looked at me and said, "Amanda, you have O blood. You're a universal donor. That's special." We're not asking, just thinking out loud. Ethan sat there, looking at his phone, not saying a word. When I stood up to clear the dishes, I caught a glimpse of his text to my father. "She's thinking about it." But I wasn't thinking about it at all. A few days later, I sat down with my parents and told them no. I explained that I needed both my kidneys for my own long-term health, that kidney donation had real risks, and that Ethan's condition was his own fault. My father's face turned red with anger. "You'd let your brother die? He's your blood," he roared. My mother started crying, saying how she'd raised me, and this was how I repaid her. After that, things got quiet. I was removed from the family group chat without explanation. A co-worker told me that someone had called the hospital asking about my mental health. I knew it was my father. I went to HR and they confirmed that an anonymous caller had claimed I had mental health issues affecting my job performance. One weekend, I visited my mother. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. When she saw me, she quickly closed it. I caught a glimpse of the subject line. Plan B, timeline. When I asked her what Plan B was, she just laughed nervously and said it was work stuff. But my mother didn't work. I should have pushed harder, but I still wanted to believe the best about them. 2 weeks after my refusal, my mother called me. She was crying softly, saying that she and my father had thought things over and wanted to make amends. They had scheduled a family check-up at a private medical center outside the city. I was hesitant, but after weeks of being ignored by my family, I wanted to believe that they had changed. So I agreed. On the day of the appointment, I drove to the medical center. It was a fancy place, with marble floors and fresh flowers in the lobby. My mother met me in the parking lot and gave me a cashmere sweater as a gift. We walked in together, and I signed in at the reception. Then the nurse called my name. My father and Ethan weren't there. My mother said they were running late, and told me to go ahead. I followed the nurse down a long corridor. I didn't see my father standing outside the window, watching me. I walked into the examination room, which felt cold, not just from the air conditioning but from a deeper sense of unease. The nurse gave me a paper gown and a cup of water, saying it would help with the blood draw. Something felt off, but I trusted my mother. I drank the water. Within minutes, I started to feel dizzy. My vision blurred, and my hands felt heavy. I realized they had drugged me. The last thing I saw was my father standing in the hallway, his face blank, as if he was just doing what needed to be done. I woke up in the recovery room, in excruciating pain. I felt a surgical incision on my back and knew immediately what had happened. When the doctor came in, he showed me a consent form with my mother's signature as my guardian. I told him I was a competent adult and that this was a felony. An hour later, my parents came in with flowers. My mother said, "We saved your brother. You should be proud." I was furious. I told them they had drugged me and stolen my kidney without my consent. My father just shrugged and said, "You're a daughter. Daughters sacrifice for their families." I knew then that I had to fight. I called the police and reported the organ theft. A detective, Detective Sarah Thompson, came to my room and asked me where my kidney was. I told her it was in Ethan 2 floors below. The investigation began. The detective found out that my father had approached Dr. Lewis, a transplant surgeon he knew, 3 days after my refusal. He had paid Dr. Lewis $50,000 to perform the transplant without my consent. They had forged documents, including a psychological evaluation and an ethics committee approval. My family tried to fight back. They sent a certified letter to my hospital, claiming I had a history of mental instability. The hospital put me on administrative leave. I was devastated, but I didn't give up. A colleague, Dr. Ryan, found a discrepancy in my anesthesia records. The sedative was administered 15 minutes before the consent form was signed, which was a massive protocol violation. This was evidence of a conspiracy. The detective also obtained a warrant for my family's email records. We found a series of emails where my father and Ethan planned the whole thing. Ethan even wrote, "Thanks, Dad. This is the only way. She owes us." The trial was long and difficult. My family's lawyers tried to paint me as an unstable daughter, but the evidence was too strong. Dr. Lewis took a deal and testified against my family. In the end, justice was served. My father was sentenced to 15 years in prison, my mother to 8 years, Ethan to 10 years with 5 years of supervised probation, and Dr. Lewis to 12 years with his medical license permanently revoked. Now, a year later, I've moved on. I've got a new apartment filled with light and plants. I'm still a nurse, and I've been promoted to charge nurse. I attend a support group for survivors of family abuse, and I've learned that I don't owe my family anything. Blood relation doesn't give them the right to my body. I've finally taken back control of my life, and I'll never let anyone treat me like that again.